My name is Nicole Couture, and I'm the Program Director at SmartSAVER. We are very excited to have so many of you on the line with us today for our special webinar, the $3,200 RESP Opportunity for BC Kids. We are especially pleased to have with us two special guests, Nicole Couture, Director of Education Program Delivery with the BC Ministry of Education, and Cherie Devisser, Manager of Community Investment with Vancity Credit Union. We also have our own Joe March, Partnership Manager with SmartSAVER, on the line as well. Today's speakers will provide an overview of the Canada Education Savings Program, including the Canada Learning Bond and the new BC Training and Education Savings Grant. Participants will also be introduced to SmartSAVER's online application process and the supports available from SmartSAVER to help organizations assist families to access these grants. We'll also share some examples of how both community organizations and financial institutions are partnering with us here at SmartSAVER to promote education savings. First, I'd like to take a minute to introduce SmartSAVER. SmartSAVER's only goal is to improve children and families' access to registered education savings plans, the Canada Learning Bond, and provincial savings incentives. Prior to our national launch in January, a 3-year pilot of SmartSAVER in Toronto taught us that working in collaboration with the federal government, with financial institutions, and with community agencies, we can improve access and participation in these beneficial savings programs. In 5 years, we're working to push the take-up of the Canada Learning Bond to 40%, and it currently sits at 31%. I'd now like to introduce to you Joe March, Partnership Manager here at SmartSAVER, who's going to provide us with a brief overview of RESPs and the Canada Learning Bond. Joe brings a wealth of experience building partnerships, especially with organizations operating in diverse, multicultural communities. He is responsible for connecting organizations across Canada to support efforts promoting the Canada Learning Bond and provincial savings incentives like the new BC grant. Over to you, Joe.
Thank you, Kayla. When SmartSAVER started looking at registered education savings plans in 2009, statistics showed a huge disparity in the use of RESPs. They were a savings vehicle widely accessed by more affluent families. Government savings incentives were going to higher income households and very little to lower income families. The disparity is also reflected in who we see attending post-secondary. Over 50% of Canadian students from the highest income families go to university, while less than 30% from the lower income families go. We think this is a waste of talent and potential, but there is a way to improve the odds. Youth who have even small amounts of savings set aside for their education are 50% more likely to pursue higher education than youth with no savings. The great news is that the federal government and some provincial governments like BC have established programs for education savings to respond to families' needs. The first component of the Canada Education Savings Program is the Registered Education Savings Plan, or RESP. This is the tax-sheltered account required to receive any of the federal or provincial benefits associated with education savings. It's important to remember that this is the first step to accessing any of the other program benefits. The second component we're covering today is the Canada Learning Bond. This is a kickstart contribution by the federal government into the RESP of a lower income child. An initial grant of $500 is followed by an additional $100 per year to a maximum of $2,000. And the third piece of the program is the Canada Education Savings Grant. This matching incentive grant is designed to motivate and reward a family's contribution to an RESP. Nicole will be covering the fourth component for families living in BC, the new provincial grant. But let's look at each of these first three components first in a little more detail. As I mentioned, a Registered Education Savings Plan, or RESP, is the receiving account required for the federal benefits like the Canada Learning Bond and Canada Education Savings Grant, and provincial benefits like the new BC Grant. An RESP is a tax-sheltered account, which means that any money in the account, including government grants, can grow free from tax. This benefits families as money from an RESP is withdrawn by the student to attend higher education, and the student will likely have no or very little income, so their tax burden will be low. It's really important to also understand that families have a variety of RESP plans and providers to choose from, and there's a wide range of conditions and costs associated with different RESP products. We're not going to get into the different investment options, but I do want to stress that RESP accounts that have no fees and require no minimum contribution are available through a number of financial institutions, including all 6 participating in SmartSAVER's online application. This means a family can literally open an RESP with $0. There are still many myths around RESPs, which SmartSAVER and its community partners work to dispel. Many believe that receiving the Canada Learning Bond will affect other benefits a family receives. This is not true. Opening an RESP and collecting the Canada Learning Bond or new BC grant does not affect provincial or federal benefits in any province. RESP benefits are considered asset and income exempt for the purpose of any social assistance. Another myth surrounds how the funds in a child's RESP can be used. Well, let's clear up this myth. In reality, the government has made the RESP very flexible so that a child can use the money in their account to pursue a wide range of post-secondary education options. This includes part-time as well as full-time studies in Canada or somewhere else in the world. It also includes apprenticeship programs, trade school, almost anything offered by an accredited educational organization, not just traditional college or university programs. For example, there are more than 230 qualifying institutions in BC alone. The last small note I want to leave you with on RESP accounts is that an RESP does not have to be opened by a parent. An RESP can be opened by a relative, public caregiver, or even a friend. But the person opening the account will always require the child's social insurance number and the primary caregiver's social insurance number because federal benefit eligibility is assessed at the primary caregiver's income level. The Canada Learning Bond, the second component of the Canada Education Savings Program, gets education savings started even when parents can't contribute themselves. The Canada Learning Bond, or CLB, is available to families with a net family income of $44,701 or less. And receiving the National Child Benefit Supplement is also an indication. And that's for children born January 1st, 2004 or later. Right now, there are more than 250,000 BC kids eligible for the bond who do not yet have it. To get the CLB, a family must open an RESP account and apply. It's that simple. It's an initial kickstart contribution into an eligible child's RESP with $100 added each year they're eligible, up to $2,000. A family doesn't need to put in a single dollar to receive this. And the grant is retroactive, which means that when an eligible family applies for the CLB, their first deposit will include the initial $500 as well as $100 for each previous year the child was eligible. For example, if an eligible family applies for the bond when their child is 5 years old and they've always been eligible, their first deposit will be $900. We at SmartSAVER believe that Canada Learning Bond is an incredible opportunity for parents to get savings started even if they have no money of their own to contribute. At this point, we've covered basic RESP accounts and the CLB. The federal government also offers an extra incentive to help motivate families to save in an RESP. This matching grant, called the Canada Education Savings Grant, adds more money to an RESP when a family contributes their own money. Everyone who starts an RESP, regardless of income, is eligible for some matching money. But the federal government provides a bigger match the lower the family's income. For example, for every $100 a family contributes to an RESP, the government will deposit an extra $40, $30, or $20, depending on the family's net income. And it doesn't matter who contributes. If a grandparent or a friend wants to contribute to a child's education savings, the matching incentive is still added.
Thank you, Joe, for that overview. We'll now hear from Nicole Couture, Director of Education Program Delivery with the BC Ministry of Education. Nicole has worked at the Ministry of Education for over 20 years, including overseeing all French programs in her early years, and is now responsible for overseeing the implementation and delivery of the BC Training and Education Savings Grant. Nicole is going to talk about that fourth component in the Canada Education Savings Program for BC residents. So Nicole, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Kayla. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to take this opportunity today to provide detailed information on the BC Training and Education Savings Grant. The program is a provincial initiative, but it is being delivered in partnership with Employment and Social Development Canada. So to put in place a program like the BC Training and Education Savings Grant, it takes quite a bit of time, and it needs to change some of the legislation that was currently in place. So this is giving you a context of what we did in the last couple of years to implement the program. So legislation is now in place. Regulation is actually effective as well. It is the government reconfirmed their commitment to offer the grant in their February 2015 budget. The application commencement date of August 15 was on target. The program was able to be operative as August 15th. And on August 31st, 2015, the Minister Bernier was launching the program in Vancouver. We know also from past experience that offering a provincial incentive, it will take quite a bit of time, either some months and it could be a few years, before we get a large number of promoters on board. But we're really pleased to have most of the credit unions at this time offering the grants, and we do have additional promoters that are joining the team as well. The goal of the BC Test Grant is for families in BC to start planning and saving early for their children's post-secondary education or training program. In this, the government of British Columbia will contribute a grant of $1,200 to eligible children through the grant. It is a one-time grant per eligible child. No additional contributions are required to obtain the grant, and our goal is really to have a maximum uptake on the number of eligible children accessing the grant. The grant will be paid into an RESP that has the option for the grant with participating promoters. The list of promoters is accessible through our website. We allow the grant to be shared among siblings. So the definition under the regulation of siblings means a sibling, half-sibling, or step-sibling. It is also eligible for any designated educational institution in the world. It must be used towards a qualifying post-secondary educational or training program. The RESP term is available up to 36 years, and the grant is being paid between the 6th and the day before the 9th birthday of the child. The BC Test Grant eligibility. There's three main criteria for a child to be eligible. The child was born in 2007 or later. At the time of application, the child and the parent or guardian of the child are residents of British Columbia. At the time of application, the child is the beneficiary of a RESP with the participating promoters and trustees. The earliest that they can access the grant is when the child turns 6. It is important to signal that they must be a resident of BC at the time of application. There's also an agreement between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Children and Family Development to ensure that children in care access equivalent funds through a learning trust fund. The application window for the grant, what we did is because it took a couple of years to implement the program, we didn't want to penalize children born in 2007 and 8 and 9, so we extended the application window for these children. So they still have the 3 years to apply. So they, as of 2015, they are eligible to apply, and they have until August 14, 2018 to apply. There's no exception to this application window. If more than one application is received from the same child, first come, first served will apply. The residency application. So the guardian and the beneficiary must be ordinarily resident of BC at the time of application of the grant. So here is a list of what we consider to be eligible residency, proof of residency. So a valid BC driver's license, a BC identification card with a picture, a BC service card, or the new, which is the new BC care card and driver license, or a BC utility bill dated 3 months and listing current address of parents and guardian. The proof of residency must be shown to the RESP promoter at the time of application. The promoter's only obligation is to identify the type of proof of residency on the application. No copy is provided to the province. And the grant doesn't have to be reimbursed if the child or family moved out of BC at a later date after they've been approved for the grant. So some statistics on BC. So we know for the 2007 cohort that we have over 43,000 children. We know from since then that the average birth rate in BC is over, it varies, but it's over 42,000 children every year. As of March 31st, 2015, we know that 67% of the 2007 cohort are already beneficiary on RESP, which represent over 29,000 children. From ESDC statistic, from the annual statistical review, we know that in BC in 2014 had the highest participation rate of the Canada Learning Bond, over 36%. And we know that BC has the second highest participation rate of the Canada Education Savings Grant, over 42%. We know from these numbers that there's a high interest in BC to save for families to save for their children's post-secondary education. We had this, what we call a soft launch of the program that happened in August by Minister Bernier. We are still planning to have what we will call the official launch later on this year or early next year. We're still working on finalizing the marketing plan. We want to ensure that the consistent branding of all materials in regards to the grant. We want to ensure as well that there's going to be online presence. We will be working with some of our promoters to develop some joint marketing materials. We are also partnering with Employment and Social Development Canada to maximize on all opportunities to try to promote the grant. And we also want to focus on messaging to families in our what we call our outreach target groups, which is Aboriginal, low-income, and New British Columbians, immigrant families. Just a note on the brochures. We are still working on the brochures. There's been a bit of a delay, so they will be available once we have the official launch of the program. You can obtain additional information if you access our website, and the address is there, or all the inquiries regarding the grant, you can call the Employment and Service Canada, Social Development Canada, and they'll be happy to assist you. You also have my email address there, so you're welcome to send any inquiries my way as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nicole, and thank you for sharing those exciting details about the BC grant. At SmartSAVER, we're really excited about the introduction of this grant. For eligible lower-income BC families, that means that there's up to $3,200 in free money available to get savings started. We'd now like to open up the webinar to take questions about the information you've heard so far about the Canada Education Savings Program, including the new BC grant. They can be asked to Joe on our SmartSAVER team or to Nicole. We'll also be opening the line up for another Q&A period at the end of the session as well. So all questions can be asked in the Q&A box at the bottom right hand of your screen, and we'll take the questions in sequence. So I'm seeing a few come in right now, so if you just give us a sec, we'll go through the questions and pass them along to our presenters. So Nicole, the first question is for you. Okay. Is the BC grant income dependent?
I'm sorry?
Is the BC grant income dependent?
Not at all.
Not at all.
No, it's based on the criteria that we established earlier. So any child born after 2007 or after is eligible for the grant, as long as they're a resident of BC and they have an RESP. And they apply before the day before they turn 9, the child turns 9.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. This next one's for Nicole as well. I have heard that to get the BCC grant, families have to open a separate RESP. Is that true? Why is that?
They don't have to necessarily open a separate RESP. They have to ensure that the RESP, if they have an RESP, that it's with a participating promoter. If the RESP that they currently have is not with a participating promoter, they need, if they want to access the grant, to make sure that they open an RESP with a participating promoter, or ask the promoter if they're not offering the grant, if they are planning to offer the grant, and when.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. The next question, what is the breakdown of the $3,200 total? And I'll send that one over to Joe. Maybe you could explain that.
Sure, Kayla. Thank you. The breakdown of the $3,200 is pretty straightforward. The $1,200 BC Training and Education Savings Grant is the first component. And then the final piece of the puzzle is the Canada Learning Bond, which can add up to a total of $2,000. Now that does depend on income eligibility through the period of saving for the child. You'll recall that the eligibility for the Canada Learning Bond is dependent on birth date, any child born since the 1st of January of 2004, and then family income. So provided that the family income has been below the threshold for the entire period of, for example, 15 years, then a child can in fact gain a total of $2,000 as the Canada Learning Bond. Some families will sort of transit a little above and a little below the financial eligibility, and so the child will receive the $500 initial grant and then $100 additional for every year that their family income is at the eligibility or below the eligibility line to the age of 15, to a maximum of $2,000. So a family that has a 15-year-old child who has been eligible for 12 years would, for example, gain a $1,700 Canada Learning Bond. So it can go to a maximum of $3,200.
Thanks, Joe. Our next question is the Canada grant, so I think that's the Canada Education Savings Grant matching, always dependent on the primary caregiver's net income?
Yes, the Canada Education Savings Grant is always dependent on the primary caregiver's income. And so the determination as to whether it's a 20%, 30%, or 40% match will be connected to that caregiver's income.
Perfect. Our next question, if you have an existing RESP and it's within the window of 2007 and later, do we need to apply for the grant by filling out the form, or is it applied for automatically? I'm wondering if maybe this should go over to Cherie from Vancity, who's on the line. Cherie, do you think you could speak to that?
Yeah, I can, but I'm sorry, you just cut out for a second. Could you just repeat that one more time for me, please?
Absolutely. If you have an existing RESP and it's within the window of 2007 and later, do we need to fill out or apply for the grant, rather, by filling out the form, or is it applied for automatically?
So basically what's happening at the level here within Vancity when we're talking about the BCT ESG, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when someone's coming into Vancity to apply for the BCT ESG grant, basically, as mentioned earlier, they do have to have an existing RESP, which will need to be open. Now, there was a question that was asked earlier about hearing through some information that people would have to open an additional RESP in order to apply for this grant. So I'm not sure if that might be a time now for me to provide a little bit of background information on that from Vancity's perspective in dealing with Central One around this issue. Would that make sense right now, Kayla?
Sure, that's relevant, yeah.
Okay, so from what we understand here at Vancity and how we're having to process these BCT ESG grant requests, a member could have an existing RESP with us or with another provider. If they wanted to apply for the BCT ESG grant, however, based on some processing systematic issues currently with Central One and their ability to house this additional grant, there is a requirement to open an additional RESP to house that specific grant for the BCT ESG at this time. Does that provide some clarification on that?
I think it does, Cherie. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll just take one other question. This question we'll shoot over to Joe. So is the $44,701 maximum income a family net income maximum, or a primary caregiver net income or maximum?
The income is a family maximum, so it is the family's income as set by the CRA.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, we have time for one more question, so we're going to take a question from Billy. The last question here we have is there a list of promoters who are offering the BC grant? Nicole, do you want to answer that one?
There is a list of promoters that's available on our website, and we will update the list as any time that we have a new promoter that comes on board.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. Okay, so thank you, everybody, for the questions. If we didn't get to your question, we'll try to address them at the next Q&A session, but we'll move on to our next portion of the presentation. We'll now continue, and I'd like to turn it back over to Joe. And Joe is going to share details about SmartSAVER's online application, which is designed to help families access no-cost RESP accounts so that families can receive their CLB, or Canada Learning Bond, and BC grant.
Thank you, Kayla. As Kayla mentioned, this year, a little earlier this year, we launched Start My RESP. It's an online RESP starter and Canada Learning Bond application. We created this online application to provide a simple first step for families to access no fee, no contribution required RESP accounts through a number of partner financial institutions and apply for the federal and provincial benefits they're entitled to. Establishing the account is one of the biggest challenges for families. Start My RESP easily assembles all of the information required for the Federal Canada Learning Bond application and transmits it securely and confidentially to the financial institution selected by the applicant. The application is found on our website, smartsaver.org, and you're looking at a screenshot of the landing page right now. The application is available in English and French with support in Mandarin, Spanish, and Punjabi, and takes less than 10 minutes to complete. And here's how it works. The Start My RESP application collects all that information required and securely transmits it to a family's selected financial institution. We're currently working with 6 financial institutions. 5 of them operate in BC. BMO, Bank of Montreal, RBC Royal Bank, Scotiabank, TD, and of course, Vancity. Each of these financial institutions has committed to establish RESPs for lower-income families with no fees and no minimum contribution, giving families the account required to access both the CLB and the new BC grant. After receiving an application submitted through smartsaver.org, the applicant's selected financial institution will contact the applicant to complete the process of opening the RESP account at a local branch or, in the case of BMO, possibly over the phone. Cherie from Vancity will share a little bit more about their process. Once the RESP account is set up, the applicant's financial institution will submit the paperwork to the federal government. If the child meets eligibility criteria for the CLB and or BC grant, the money will be deposited into the RESP account, all with no contribution required. If a family does decide to make contributions to their RESP account, the application they complete online will also enable them to receive the Canada Education Savings Grant. It's really that easy. So you've just seen us kind of scroll through the application as it collects the information. For BC residents, using Start My RESP is a great first step to receiving the new $1,200 BC grant. As Nicole shared, BC residents require an RESP account to apply for and receive this new grant. We encourage all BC families to start their RESP accounts even before their child turns 6, so they can start collecting the CLB and matching grants if they choose to contribute. This will ensure they're also ready to apply for the BC grant when their child turns 6. Vancity, who we'll hear from next, is offering the BC grant right now.
Thank you, Joe. We're now going to move on to hear from Cherie Devisser, Manager, Community Investment with Vancity Credit Union. Cherie will talk about their partnership with SmartSAVER and how they're working to promote these valuable savings opportunities. Cherie has worked at Vancity in various roles for the past 18 years and is currently responsible for overseeing the community project grants and leading a team of people who specialize in the cultivation of impactful relationships aligned to Vancity's strategic priorities. So over to you, Cherie.
Thank you so much, Kayla, and thanks everyone today for joining the call. I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to you all with regards to the RESP and the offering that we have here at Vancity, as well as our partnership with the SmartSAVER project. So maybe just a bit of background to some of the work that we've done at Vancity that has also led us to this partnership with SmartSAVER. So as you know, RESPs have been available for a number of years. However, Vancity only currently holds approximately 50,000 registered plans with our members. And what we've realized is much of our work done within Vancity is that a large portion of lower income families have been having a more difficult time accessing or opening RESPs. And so we wanted to do a bit of work around that. So we do highlight this product with every opportunity with engaging with our members, but there's a number of limitations that we've uncovered that can hold people back from opening RESPs, including financial limitation. And we also had minimum deposit requirements to open RESPs within Vancity that we've since changed. Now, when we talk about who benefits from an RESP, we've heard a lot about that already, but obviously all people with young children, grandparents and so forth who wish to support grandchildren, friends, family, etc. There's great opportunity for them to support young children that they know in promoting post-secondary education and the affordability of doing that. Now, specifically, we've heard about the Canada Learning Bond and the BC Training and Education Savings Grant, which offers some additional benefits to families at the current time, and specifically those that for the Canada Learning Bond that are in the lower income levels, and of course the free money that families can access through the BC Training and Education Savings Grant. So the overview of our partnership, I wanted to talk a little bit about that today. So again, it was a way for Vancity to have a partnership with the SmartSAVER and increase the awareness and uptake of these RESPs that are typically undersubscribed, whether it be low income, specific demographics such as Aboriginal, etc. So as we know, this program was designed to promote the RESPs and to help raise awareness amongst those who perhaps didn't have as much exposure to these plans or perhaps felt they were out of reach. Now, what happens within Vancity is similar to what Joe had mentioned. A member could come through the SmartSAVER portal and choose to work with Vancity on opening their new RESP with us. At that time, that referral is automatically received through our Member Service Center, who have been trained on answering questions and talking a little bit about the introduction to Vancity, explaining the RESP, the no fee and no contribution specifics, and providing a general overview of any investment opportunities or investment choices that would be available within that plan. At which time it's followed up with making an appointment at the location most convenient to our new member and at a time that will meet their needs. The application then would just simply attend the branch and sign the appropriate documents, providing the appropriate ID to get things moving forward. So we've been doing a little bit of work around spreading the word here within Vancity, and some of the things that we've done here just in an internal awareness campaign with our members is focusing on some of our online banking messaging, digital marketing within our branches. For those of you who may have stopped by a Vancity branch, you'll notice that we do have digital marketing in each location. We've done statement messaging and media, both through social media and live releases through radio and television. We also have made the BC Training and Education Savings Grant available for all our members effective August 15th, and that's supported through Central One Credit Union. We've also done things such as a training refresh for all of our staff on RESPs, as well as some BC Training and Education Savings Grant, and we've connected with Omega and through the SmartSAVER project with community partners for servicing specific demographics, including low income, Aboriginal, housing co-ops, etc. And in addition to that, most recently, we did an awareness campaign in one of our locations we've recently opened in Alert Bay, providing general information to the various people that are living in that local area. So I have attached a little bit of a place where you can get some additional information, which is obviously our website under vancity.com, and how RESPs work. So I'm not sure, I'll leave it here and hand this back to Kayla to do the wrap-up. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Cherie. We at SmartSAVER are really thrilled to be partnered with you to help more families access these benefits. So you've heard a lot of information this afternoon, helping families to learn about and access these benefits can seem like a daunting task. So we're now going to turn it back over to Joe to wrap up by sharing some of the ways we here at SmartSAVER can help families access both the Canada Learning Bond and the new BC grant. Our only goal here at SmartSAVER is to help lower-income families establish savings for their post-secondary education. So we really encourage you to think of SmartSAVER as your own resource or support in helping families to access these benefits. Joe?
Thank you, Kayla. We're here to help community organizations like yours. Families eligible for the CLB know and trust you. When you tell them they can get free money for their kids' higher education, they're more likely to believe you than us. So we encourage all communities we work with, take our tools, make them your own, adopt them, adapt them, rebrand them. We consider them open source. In addition to Start My RESP, we can also help organizations promote the CLB. We can provide training so you feel confident about the bond, and we can share simple, multilingual, customizable, and printable materials for your organization to use for promotion. And if any questions arise during the Start My RESP application process or when you're working with the family, we offer live support for all applicants through email at info@smartsaver.org or our toll-free number, which is 1-855-RESP-CLB. And here are some examples of the kinds of tools we can offer. We offer video, animations, quick reference charts, printable materials, and tools for frontline service providers like you. Our education website is also available in 16 languages. And we also offer financial support to organizations through our Community Incentive Program. We know you're juggling competing priorities with scarce resources, and the Canada Learning Bond and BC Grant could seem to some like just one more thing to add to a very long list. The community incentive helps offset any costs incurred in helping families use the online application. It could even be a small revenue generator. Thanks to our funders and financial institution partners, we're able to offer a $25 reward for each online application your organization helps a family complete. Following this webinar, we'll provide information on how your organization can join this program.
Great, thank you, Joe. And thanks again to Cherie and Nicole. You have all contributed to a really information-packed session. We'd like to once more open up the webinar to any questions from any of our three speakers. And again, you can enter them into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand of your screen, and we'll take them in sequence. So we've already got a few. Nicole, I'll start with you with this first question. Are other FI financial institutions or banks coming on board soon?
We have quite a few institutions over, I do believe it's over, I don't have the form in front of me, but over 32 promoters that have signaled interest to offer the grant. We currently have Central One, all with the credit unions in BC, and we do have another 3 that have recently joined the list as well. And we're expecting that over the next year, we will see more promoters joining as well.
Thanks, Nicole. And I know here at SmartSAVER, we've been talking to all of our financial institution partners. So BMO, RBC, TD, and Scotia are 4 bank partners on the online application, and they have all told us that they will be offering the grant either this fall or early in 2016 as well.
This is great. And we do know from past experience, as I mentioned before, that it does take, when you implement a new incentive program like this, it does take quite a bit of time for promoters to join, to offer the grant, as they do have to upgrade the system. So it's time consuming, and depending on the size and depending of the different financial institution, it has to fit within the timelines as well. So in the next few months to a year, we will have more promoters on board.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. Our next question we'll send over to Joe. Does SmartSAVER or Vancity offer service in other languages?
Oh, yes. I mean, certainly our support materials on smartsaver.org are actually provided in 16 languages. And then on the Start My RESP online application, the application itself is submitted in either English or French, as is required by the federal government, but also provided language supports in French, Spanish, Punjabi, and simplified Chinese. Many people will identify that as Mandarin. So a lot of of additional language support is available through SmartSAVER.
Cherie, do you guys have anything to add from a Vancity perspective on that?
Sure I can. At the current time, we don't have any specific marketing around RESPs in different languages that I'm aware of, as in printed collateral. But within Vancity here, specifically within our call center and branches, we do have a wide variety of different languages that are spoken and can arrange to have specialists in that specific language available to assist partners and potential new members around this specific topic.
Thanks, Cherie. Our next question, I think we'll send over to Nicole. The question is, for families with kids under 6 years old, will applying now guarantee $1,200, or could that be lost with government changes?
They must apply when the child is 6, so they cannot apply prior to the child born. It has to be born in 2007 or later on. So that's one of the eligibility criteria. As to the incentive, the incentive will be in place for how long, that I cannot answer. There is a very strong commitment from government to keep this incentive going for quite a few years.
Perfect. Thanks, Nicole. We've actually got one more for Nicole. Do you have links to know how to obtain ID for applicants? I can actually, maybe I'll just jump in. We at SmartSAVER have some links on our website on how to obtain SIN numbers. And Nicole, I'm not sure if you guys have any other BC-specific information on your website.
No, we don't have anything specific on our website, but there is information available on the government website. CanLearn.org will provide some information as well.
Yes, CanLearn is a great resource.
Yes.
Our next question, can families call SmartSAVER to start the process if they are unable to apply online?
Well, yeah, I mean, the simple answer to that question is absolutely, yes. Just call our 1-855 number and we can walk people through and we can do it for them, yep.
Perfect, thanks, Joe. Our next question, for remote communities or individuals with accessibility issues, are there promoters that do community visits? Cherie, is that something you might be able to speak to, or?
Yes, we have a number of different things that can be arranged. Often RESP-specific seminars and things like that can be arranged dependent on interest and held by specialists within Vancity, of course, subject to booking appropriate times and so forth. We also do a number of different things like that through just general financial literacy seminars held in branches. So it just depends on the request, but certainly we have that availability to do that.
That's great. And one of the exciting things here at SmartSAVER is that one of our bank partners, BMO, is actually got a process in place by which they can help online applicants actually complete the process of opening their RESP and applying for the learning bond over the phone. So instead of having to go into a branch, an applicant can actually finish the process completely over the phone, and then the application is mailed out to them for signature. So we can share more specific details with anybody who has questions afterwards too, but that's a great opportunity for people in remote communities. Okay, our next question, is the no-fee RESP only for low-income families? Cherie, can I turn that one over to you?
No, I wouldn't say so at all. I mean, I think just generally speaking, in today's economy, I think all families can find it difficult to find additional money sometimes to save for various reasons, for whether it be their children's education or whatsoever. So no, specifically it doesn't have to be. What we found, and the reason that we stopped requesting an initial deposit to open RESPs, is we did find it was somewhat a barrier for our entire membership and allowing accessibility for all. So no, I think it's open to everybody. It's just the certain grants, such as the CLB, that would be specific to certain income levels.
Thanks, Cherie. Our next question, are these grants automatically deposited into the RESP? And Cherie, maybe you could again speak to the process?
Yeah, so basically what happens when an RESP is opened, specifically through the process with credit unions, is once that documentation is completed and submitted through our registered plans department, through communication with Central, Canada Revenue Agency, is determined at that time specific eligibility for a grant such as the CLB, for example. Once that's approved, the funds are automatically transferred in, but it's not an immediate process. That is part of the entire process, which can take a little bit of time to have that grant money approved and deposited to the account. Now, with the BC Training and Education Savings Grant, again, it's not an immediate deposit, but it is part of the process of verifying eligibility and having those funds deposited.
Thanks, Cherie. Our next question, I'll turn over to Joe. If family income is below $44,701 for 1 year, can the child receive the initial $500 from the Canada Learning Bond?
Absolutely. If a child is eligible for a single year, the initial grant of the Canada Learning Bond is always $500. So the very first deposit that's made is always $500 for the Canada Learning Bond.
Will there be notices going out to folks on income assistance? So that's a great question. Maybe I'll take that one from a SmartSAVER perspective. We are working with a number of different income support programs across the country to promote and provide information to folks on income assistance, and we're hopeful that we'll have that opportunity in BC as well. Our next question, do the funds grow while they are invested? Cherie, can I turn that one over to you?
Yes, you can. I mean, obviously, when funds are invested, there's different types of investment vehicles in which RESPs can be deposited into, which will determine the ultimate return on that investment. As I'm sure most people have heard or follow themselves, general interest rates right now on savings accounts is quite low, so the return is not so great. There are, however, options for investments for RESPs in a mutual fund component depending on the time frame of the investment and the risk tolerance of the investor themselves. Again, this is not a guaranteed return and does have a risk factor associated to it. So yes, you can in fact deposit and earn interest or different return within your investment, but depending on the risk tolerance and the type of the investment will have a lot to do with that.
Great, thanks. Cherie, I'm going to give this question to you. What happens if a family wants to cash out their RESP early?
Okay, wow, that's a big one for me and one that I haven't faced in a little while, but it's my understanding if the RESP is to be cashed out early or there are certain withdrawal requirements specifically allowable by a family at the time that they're about to use the funds. If the RESP is collapsed, for example, and the child is not going to school at all, then it's my understanding that the granted funds are then returned back to the government for that child that is not taking the post-secondary education.
Thanks, Cherie. And I know from our bank partners' perspective, the plans that we're helping families access through our online application, if a family needs to close the plan early, they can take their contributions back if they've made any, and the government will just take their money back if they're not used for post-secondary.
Just a note for the BC grant, we do allow sharing among siblings, though, if it's a family plan.
That's a great point. Thanks, Nicole. Our next question, if a child is age 4, opens an RESP through SmartSAVER, does the system flag for that family when the child turns 6 that they're eligible for the BC Training and Education Savings Grant? So I can take that question. We don't have a process built into our system right now that would do that. What we are committing to right now is that when families open an RESP through our online application, we will remind them or notify them when their financial institution is offering the grant and if there's anything else that needs to be done on their perspective. Hopefully our financial institution partners will be reaching out to applicants or to RESP account holders when their when the child turns 6 so that they can apply for their BC grant too. Cherie, I'm not sure if you have something else to add there.
We didn't have any specific plans in place as this is a fairly new grant, so nothing's been determined at this time, but it is generally part of the conversations that our account managers would be having within the relationships they hold with our members is to set that reminder. But a specific mail out has not been planned at this time, and I'm not able to 100% confirm this. So I'm not sure if this is something that Nicole might know. I don't know, but I had heard that the government would actually be sending notifications out to family, and I don't know if that's accurate or not.
It's something that we plan to do, but it's not something that we're going to be doing this fall. This is going to be part of our marketing and communication plan. So we're still drafting that. We're still in the process of getting it approved. So it's something that we're looking into the possibility of doing, but most likely it will be later on next spring.
Thanks, Nicole. Our next question, I'll send this over to Cherie. I think you kind of answered this already, but does a family get to decide the type of investment tool for their RESP account?
Yeah, you certainly do, and that's part of the process. So any of the referrals that come through the SmartSAVER portal, when that family receives a call from our Member Service Center, those options will be discussed at that time. Now, currently, for the BC Training and Education Savings Grant, there are savings and term deposit options available, but because, as Nicole had mentioned, this is so very new, mutual fund options are not available at this time, but should be available later on this fall to early 2016.
Great, thanks, Cherie. And I think that's all of our questions. So I want to thank everyone for participating in this webinar, and special thanks to Cherie and Nicole for their participation and for taking the time to be with us today. We hope that you feel the same sense of excitement that we do here at SmartSAVER about the incredible savings opportunities these tools are giving lower income BC families in particular. So we're going to leave you with a few resources, and we'll also be sending out a follow-up email including a recording of today's session and the slides that we presented. If you have colleagues that would benefit from learning more, we'll also be hosting a webinar next Thursday on the basics of RESPs, the Canada Learning Bond, and provincial grants, and we'll share the registration info for that webinar in our follow-up email as well. So thank you everyone for participating, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.